Hello, everyone. This is David coming to you, and I'd like to say hello to my special guest, Kevin, right me here. He's going to be listening in for a little while, kind of a anonymous type of thing. He's going to be there watching over me. Funny thing, I've been hearing a lot of talk about trying to get rid of all the homelessness there is. And they're looking into the cause and they're trying to get all these government aids to come together and defeat homelessness. I'm not going to do it. You ever hear that song? Everything old is new again. Everything old is new again. Type of thing. Anyway, that's because we keep repeating history over and over and over. No matter how much we try, we just never learn. The first part, you can't have those in power ruling over you try to dictate, and that's what you want them to do, how to handle the poor. And I'm not talking about just the poor people barely scraping by. Those are the upper poor class. I'm talking about the lower poor class that not scraping by at all. They are living uh, day by day and looking for where they're going to sleep at that night and what they're going to eat that day. That's their main worry. I mean, let's get real, people. You're not going to get rid of all the homeless people there is. And the way things are going, cost things escalating, there's just going to be more and more of them. It's going to get bigger. If you live in a large city, everybody gravitates to the largest city. Even the poor, that's where they go. They want to get rich. But when you get people working for these box stores like Target, Walmart, and different places, and they can't make a living, they're going to wind up in the poor living on the streets. That's just the way it is. Come on, people, let's get real. In the history of people being poor and homeless, there's certain uh, major cities, and I'm talking about Rome, Greece, Egypt, Jerusalem, and different places like that, where the population was very large. And the poor there, if you went back and you did a summary of the poor class compared to the rich or even moderately sustainable income class, you'll find out that there was somewhere like 34 to 44% that was totally homeless, poor. But you say, well, people just can't live like that. No, they can't. So that's why they move on to the other cities, other places. It's not the people in power that can help them. Never has. I don't care how many homeless shelters you build for the homeless people to go in to live together. Anytime you get more than two or three of them together and there's some type of adverse or reaction between the two, you're going to have a problem. Now, thinking about those as sheltering two, three, four, and 500 people at a time, and where their political powers and all those uh, people of some kind, you just can't do that. You see, homelessness isn't something that you choose. Sure, there are those out there that choose to be homeless, But it ain't something that you choose. It's something that you have no choice in. You take away a man's ability to make a living, and they're going to become homeless. Even the mothers and children, yes, they're going to become homeless. Well, what do you do with them? You can't have the government come in and do something that just never has happened. I'll tell you a solution that happened a long, long time ago during the time of Egyptians. There were those that came from Israel or the Sinai Desert into Egypt, and they were looking for themselves to become not homeless anymore, not to be wandering. So there was a few people got together and said, "We'll offer you a job. You do this and do that for me, and we'll provide you with food and substance and everything." And before long, those poor people, those ones that was homeless, become the slaves of the rich and powerful. That's just the way it was, and that's the way it is now. Corporate people can get together and create a little world of their own. Lots of these large plants, and I'm going to use Amazon as one. As they're growing, they need workers, but they cannot provide a sustainable living for everyone. But what they can do is keep the wages they are instead of giving the people wages, provide them with a home. They have a home they ain't got to worry about. They don't need more money. They get that. Help them with sustainable food and energy sources. Then they ain't got as much to worry about, and you ain't got to pay them as much. Give them the respect that they need. Any person, man, woman, whatever, they need to provide for their family for a sustainable life. They're not looking to get rich quick, not like most people. Some people want to break out and do their own thing. But once you're in that corporate world where you're making a living and you want somebody to work for you, you have to realize that those people that you hire are there to make a living just like you are. They may not make as much, therefore, they can't do as much as you. It becomes unsustainable after a while if you don't increase their wages to reflect the demand of the society at the time. It just don't work. But corporate people in the past have done that. I remember tell in the history of the mill workers starting up throughout the United States. Now, the mill workers, in order to have the workers in their mills, they built these little shanty towns. And you hear about them working in a shanty town. You know, they had their own food places and stuff like that, and they didn't cross the tracks or any place else to go in for that. They lived in a shanty town, but they didn't have to worry about rent because rent was paid for. They didn't have to worry about food because food was paid for. The ones that I think really suffered the most through that were the union workers working for the railroad, working for the electrical company, working for the coal mines and stuff like that. Because all these union places had a company store where the person can go in, charge this and charge that, and it would come directly out of their pay, but they didn't have to worry. They had food, and when they got their paycheck, it wasn't for near as much. It's easier and cheaper to supply your workers with these places to live and food they need to eat, clothes on their back, than it is to give them a raise. And then you know that they're there and they're going to work for you. That's the way it was. I heard so many people talking about mill villages where, yeah, if you don't behave, son, we're going to send you off to live in the mill village. Or I don't want to work for them. I have to live in that shanty town. Well, take the pay you want. Don't live in the shanty town, but live in a house from somebody else that you're paying rent to that you can't really afford to, and you're going to wind up homeless. But that was escalating. And in 1960, late 1960, early 70s, this is the way it was. A person working, and they work for anywhere from $1 an hour to $2 an hour. Some made $3 an hour. If you're a waiter, waitress, cook, or something like that, you can pretty well expect that you're getting paid about 50 to 65 cents an hour plus tips. You have to claim the tips, but most people overlook that. But that's what you work for. Rent back then ran you anywhere from $50 to $100 a month. This is for the real nice places. But you got to realize $50 a month, and you're working for, let's say, $2 an hour. That's $16 a day, and you'd have to have a good 5 days work 1 week or 25% of your time working to pay your rent. Then you got other things: car, gas, insurance, upkeep of the place you were living, food, and all like that. So by the time it was all said and done, they couldn't afford to get sick. Let one get sick, and that was it. They're living on the streets. But there was another ratio that was happening back then during the late 60s, early 70s. You could go and get a car financed. Usually it's something cheap like a Rambler, a Gremlin, or a VW, something like that. And they ran about $2,000, $3,000 a piece. That was pretty good. And the cost of that car would wind up costing you about another $50, $60 a month. And sure, it took you 60 months to pay it off, and you got to do the upkeep on it. But compared to the cost now, that's cheap. Of course, we're looking at the upper class of people, middle income, that can afford the cars today. The people that's working and making less than $20,000, they can't afford these cars because they don't make enough to pay rent, let alone to have a car, to have license and insurance. The cost of things are just outrageous, but that's the way it's always been. To get a piece of bread back in Egypt time or in Roman time, you worked a full hard day for, and that was just enough to feed you or maybe the few small children in your family's mouth. That's the way it was. Those that broke away from the big cities went out into the farm areas. They worked for free, but they had a place to stay at night. They had food in their belly. They didn't have much of anything else, but they did have that. They wasn't slaves to the farmer they worked for. They can get up and leave anytime they want to. But eventually, it was those that was living like that was making a living. The farmer himself was taking his goods and stuff into the city to selling it, coming back to buy just what he needed to sustain and keep his family going. During the time of great potato famine, that's what the farmers or landlords, those in the upper class, was relying on was that extra income. And during the famine, they didn't have it. First ones to go were the lower class. And what did they do? They went down into the local politician place and signed up to be moved to lands far away from where they're at to help cultivate and grow it. make it richer. It was hard, but where they were living was harder. I'm just saying, people, it's always been the poor, the very poor, that always made it, things available for all the others. But then the poor, once they get rich and they take a look back behind them, where there was just them poor, there are hundreds more. You can't escape it. There is no equal in all of that. If there was ever a chance for poor to be equal, the whole world would have to give up trying to strive to make their countries and everything better and all. They'd have to settle that this way it is. We'd have to share it all. Everything would have to be equal. Well, we know right now in this world there's no such thing as all things equal. And there ain't going to be for a long time. So you're sitting there trying to get some government to help fund to get the homeless off the street or to get them, those most destitute, help. Just know there is no wind to this. It's a revolving door, just like there is to any prison or any jail or mental health institution or any other part of society. There is a revolving door. Anyway, for Kevin back there and myself, David, I'm going to say goodbye. Y'all have a nice night. And just be thankful tonight. And if you get children, kiss them or you can care for. Bye bye.